I'm Nick Knudsen, joined by Will Miles. Welcome to Stand Up and Holler. On tonight's episode, we'll do a McNeese State recap. We'll revisit some preseason expectations through two games. Tennessee preview, obviously, big game in the Swamp on Saturday. And we'll wrap up with thoughts around the SEC. Is too much being made of early season SEC struggles, Will, or at least perceived struggles? Couple big losses out the gate there, Will. So we'll discuss that a little bit. But first off, hey man, you're just getting back from Vegas here, so that's what we're recording a night late here. So how was your trip, dude?
I mean, it was good. I'm old, so going to Vegas is still it's fun. It's an interesting experience, but it's not the same experience as when you were 25 or 35, even 35 going out there. I got kids, man. So like the 3 hours throws you off, and came back on the red eye. So it could be a struggle for the next couple of days. Get ready. It'll be good. I've prepared myself to now be able to stay up late for the Tennessee game on Saturday. So
Yeah,
so
you got any Gator props this weekend?
Probably take the over would be my bet. Take the over. I don't care what it is. Take
There
the
you
over.
go. There you go. All right. Well, let's first, before we get into Tennessee, let's discuss the McNeese State game this weekend. And Will, before I hear any as Deion Sanders would say, bull junk about yeah, it's an FCS opponent. There's nothing to read here, blah, blah, blah. Hey, listen. I seem to recall a moment a couple of Novembers ago when an FCS school rolled into the Swamp and set a opponent record for the number of points scored. These games aren't always pretty. Our opponent played in one of them a week ago, by the way, here Tennessee versus Austin Peay. So it's about execution, Will. You don't read too much into the result in the sense that you can't necessarily extrapolate all these results to the next game. However, they went out and they executed this one. It was a thing of beauty. Some of the what they did was just great. They got back to who we thought they would be, who at least we thought they should be. 51 rushes for 327 yards, 233 yards through the air. Really a nice tune-up. A nice tune-up for Tennessee. You wanted to see them get it together, play a cleaner football game. They had the one fumble at the end. But other than that, Will, we might have to amend our new favorite motto here: feed 2, feed 7. Number 20 looks like he fits pretty well in that group there. Johnson, 15 carries for 119 yards, 2 touchdowns. ETN, 11 carries for 84 yards and a touchdown. And Trayon Webb, the true freshman out of Trinity Christian in Jacksonville, Florida, 14 carries for 71 yards, 2 touchdowns. Will, that running game was impressive, but they had the offensive line. Hey, as great as those running backs are, that offensive line, I can't count how many of those 40 combined carries between those three. These guys were 4 or 5 yards downfield before anyone was even laying a hand on them, because the offensive line did some serious work against McNeese State on Saturday night, Will. And if we get the offensive line stepping up and playing pretty well here, that's going to be a big key for this offense going forward.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the earlier FCS opponents, not just Samford, where they gave up 6.2 yards per play and 52 points a couple of years ago, but Eastern Washington gave up 17 points, 4.8 yards per play. So against McNeese, 7 points, and the only 7 points came after the turnover on offense for the fourth or fifth string running back laying the ball on the ground deep in his own territory. They gave up 112 yards, 2.8 yards per play. So certainly a step forward from what we've seen against FCS opponents in the past. I think, I'm treating this one in my mind a lot like a spring game, where there are things you can take from a spring game that tell you something about the team. Even though we know the spring game is meaningless in many ways, this game against McNeese State is meaningless. And I mean, look, the offense looked great. They had 560 yards total. But Tarleton State the week earlier against McNeese put up 52 points and 554 yards. So it's not as though Florida was like heads and shoulders above the other opponents McNeese has faced. McNeese was an overmatched team. McNeese was playing shell coverage and basically saying, run the ball, go ahead. And Florida decided to take what they were giving them, which, is what you have to do in those situations. But also, I think it's very clear that Florida was the superior athletic team, as it should be for an SEC team playing an FCS team. At the same time, you got to do what you got to do, right? I mean, you got to actually do. Like, it could be worse. It could be worse. I mean, I think Tennessee fans after the game against Austin Peay last week are more nervous than they were after the Virginia game. I think Florida fans probably a little bit more sanguine than they would have been after the Utah game. At the same time, I think the Utah and the Virginia games are probably more indicative of what we're going to see moving forward, or at least some of the problems we're going to see moving forward. And that'll be the question, right? Is the procedure penalties when Florida was physically superior started to go away? The mental mistakes when Florida was the superior team physically went away. But now they're going to have an opponent who comes in who's at least equivalent when it comes to their physicality, when it comes to their ability, when it comes to, you know, having to be afraid that someone's going to beat you deep, those sorts of things. And we'll see, are those mistakes going to crop back up as the talent level comes back up, or did they use this as a tune-up in the way a lot of people use an FCS opponent to tune up for the season when they don't have an opener like Utah, sort of get those mistakes out of the way? So good win for Florida, but obviously an expectation for them to win. And I think, you know, it's interesting the way the season starts out with the game against Utah, then the game against McNeese, then the game against Tennessee, and the game against Charlotte. We're going to be back in the situation where, you know, next week's game against Charlotte doesn't really tell us anything about the team. So it's 2 weeks of feeling great if you win this game coming up against Tennessee. It's 2 weeks feeling like garbage if you win this game, or if you lose the game against Tennessee. So an important one coming up here for the Gators.
Well, I certainly, it's like we said before in the preview show with McNeese. I think this is an opportunity to make a statement about who you're going to be, what you want to be going forward. And I think Billy Napier came out and he made that statement loud and clear on what he wants to do on the offensive side of the ball.
I mean, so yes, he absolutely gave the ball to the running backs. I think it then leads to the question of why didn't we do that a week earlier, right? Like, why did it take getting your ass kicked to then have to go do this and establish it on the ground? And my issue with Napier wasn't that the ball was getting stuffed when they were trying to run the ball against Utah. My issue with Napier is that they just didn't even try, right? That they thought they had some sort of advantage through the air that they just did not have. And, you know, they had a really sort of interesting setup with, I think they had ETN in the backfield, or no, they ran a reverse essentially, but it was kind of a cool play to Trey Wilson in this game against McNeese. I'm like, well, this is an interesting time to show that. Like, so I guess they wanted to put that on film for Tennessee, so Tennessee has to prepare for it on the backside. Look, I think one game never defines your season. So the game against Utah doesn't define it. The game against McNeese doesn't define it. I'm not willing to read a whole lot into the McNeese win until we start seeing the things that transferred from the Utah game to the McNeese game then show up against big time opponents like Tennessee. And so, look, Napier has an opportunity here. The team has an opportunity here to completely bury any narrative that came out of week one. But they also have an opportunity to reinforce everything, every assumption and every narrative about this team that came out of week one. So the McNeese game doesn't reverse any of that stuff. Obviously, if they'd have struggled and it was 27-10 or something, we'd be having a different conversation about, oh God, like are we going to go 2-10? And I don't think that's the case. But you know, McNeese is not a high level, even FCS opponent. And so I don't think, like I said, it's a spring game, right? You look at it, you say, I can see a lot of positives. I can see a lot of things where there was progress made. At the same time, it doesn't matter until you establish it on the field against a quality opponent, and Florida's going to get an opportunity to do that this week.
Right. Still got to execute it. Even if you are the superior opponent, you still got to go out and execute. Something else that stood out, Wilson certainly very involved. Very much enjoyed seeing Boardingham flatten a defender, a potential tackler along the sidelines. That people are excited about that guy's athleticism. I think that play showed you why.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there were a lot of really good things in the game. I think from an offensive perspective, their ability to put together drives was impressive. The one pockmark in all of that was just really a lack of big plays. Coming out in the third quarter, they hit a couple. There's a 23-yard pass to Pearsall on the first touchdown drive, and then the 50-yard pass to Pearsall for the final touchdown that Mertz was involved in. Like, they finally started to get some explosive plays to the air, but one of the reasons you want to run the ball as effectively as they do is to be able to take those deep shots. Didn't really take them that early on, and you know, that's going to be something that we're going to have to examine in this Tennessee game. I think Tennessee's going to do the same thing. I think they're going to dare Florida to run the ball, or I don't know. Tennessee might take one of two tacks. They're either going to dare Florida to run the ball, 6 guys in the box, and say we're going to play coverage and keep everything in front of us because we don't think you can make your way all the way down the field without screwing something up. or they're going to get ultra aggressive and they're going to say, we don't think Graham Mertz can beat us deep because he hasn't shown that yet. I suspect it'll probably be the former because you really don't want to get the swamp crowd involved if Florida's able to connect on a couple of big throws. I think what they're going to do is they're going to dare Florida go on 10, 11, 12 play drives. And the question is going to be, is Florida going to be able to maintain that against an opponent who is obviously superior to McNeese State? So the explosives, though, look, those are indicative of teams that score in high level amounts. Like teams that run 10, 11, 12 play drives consistently are usually teams that also have high levels of explosivity because those are just teams that score points overall, have really good quarterback play. Florida's going to need explosive plays. And the fact that they had very few against Utah and then only 3 against McNeese is something that I walk into this one with Tennessee being a little bit worried because, look, that game against Utah, when it was 17-3, game was over. And that's kind of where we're at, is this team's going to have to play from in front. And, if Tennessee's able to pop a couple, all of a sudden you're playing from behind again, and that's just going to be a real struggle.
Yeah, the other thing too, I know we praise the offensive line out the gate here, but just seeing it operate another week here without Egwikin at center, to see that it did have a cohesion about it this week. And I understand the differential with the opponent, but again, you execute with that level of cohesion where it seemed like guys were getting to the right spots and things were just working very well. I like to see at least you get that under your belt going into Tennessee week if Slaughter's going to be the guy for Tennessee against Tennessee.
I mean, look, I think the Utah game was a disaster, but this team isn't that bad. I think the McNeese State game was obviously wonderful to watch. I'm not sure that this team is that good. I think they're somewhere in between. And the question is going to be, can they rise to the opponent when they have an opportunity to do so? So look, it's a home game against a rival. Napier hasn't beaten a rival since he's gotten here. This is one of those things where look, I think we can all understand. I think we all penciled in a Georgia L at the beginning of the season. I think most of us penciled in an LSU L at the beginning of the season. I think you penciled in an FSU L. I had that one as a toss-up, at least before the season started. So those three, you sit there and look and go, all right, those rivalry games, those are going to be tough. This is the one. If you've fallen behind Tennessee, then that's a problem, because Tennessee is just 1 year ahead of where Florida is in terms of rebuild. And obviously last year, in the second year of the rebuild, Tennessee went 11-2. So I think this is a measuring stick. And yes, it's great that we saw some cohesion from the offensive line. I thought Lindell Hudson looked very, very good. I think getting Egwikin back obviously is a big deal for a couple of different reasons, but mainly because, in terms of the offensive line calls, making sure that you've got, you're focusing your line the way you want to pick up pass rushes or pick up blitzes, or where you want to go in the run, how you're going to slide, those sorts of things. Those are all things that the center controls, as well as we saw a couple of times that Slaughter got beat up front against Utah. You're going to be facing a pretty physical defensive front in Tennessee. So this is a test for Florida. I actually think, though, it's more of a test for Napier, because he went away from the running game so fast against Utah. And I want to know, did he learn his lesson? Or is he going to go away from the running game again against Tennessee if it's not successful early on? Because the reality is that the time that I expect Florida's running game to really take hold is in the third and fourth quarter, when the mugginess of the swamp is really starting to make that first layer of Tennessee defenders wear down. And now can you run it for 5, 6, 7 yards a pop? Whereas earlier in the game, it was maybe going for a half a yard or a yard. That, to me, is going to be the test, and is the value of all the offensive linemen against McNeese State rotating in, is that now hopefully you've got some more confidence in those guys. You can get your best 5 guys out there, and now you're able to in the third and fourth quarter punish Tennessee, because that's the path, right? I mean, the path to Florida winning this game is going to be reducing the number of possessions Tennessee has. It's going to be going on long drives and then scoring touchdowns, not field goals, when they get down to the red area. And then going to be in the third and fourth quarter just saying, you know what? The run is coming. You have 8 or 9 guys in the box, and we don't care. We're going to run it down your throat anyway, because you're tired. You're not used to this heat. Here you go. Feed 2, feed 7, give them the ball, and let them go. But you got to be willing to stick with it in the first half. Maybe even punt the ball a couple of times, but have given your running backs opportunities to punish the defense. And they didn't do that against Utah. And we'll see if Napier has the patience to be able to do that in this one.
Feed 2, feed 20, or feed 2, feed 7, and let's give 20 an appetizer. How about that? 20
Well,
deserves. I think 20 earned himself an appetizer. Let's get 20 some apps there.
let
We'll
him
give him some
let him
apps.
return some kickoffs.
Yeah, man, that guy needs to touch the ball. He looked quite impressive. For that's a true freshman too. He looks very impressive for a true freshman there. Will, and by the way, hey, this Billy Napier hasn't beat any of our rivals. I'm going to read you some numbers here. Will, final AP poll last year: number 1, number 6, number 11, and number 16. That's the final rankings there. Georgia, Tennessee, Florida State, LSU. It's not like these are bad football teams he's losing to. Like, I'm not making like I don't want to go 0-4 against our main rivals in a year either. But I mean, man, it's some good football teams out there. I just want to give them a little credit there. All right, let's talk about the defense here. 112 total yards. Again, I don't care that it's McNeese State. You executed. You went out and did it. We've seen instances where the defense has not executed against far lower competition. This is awesome. This was awesome. I know I didn't give total credit to the defense. I thought the defensive stats were a bit of a mirage against Utah. Florida's holding on to the football for about 10 minutes of the fourth quarter. They were up 24-3 early on, kind of like Mertz's passing yards. It's kind of garbage time stats in a way where, hey, yeah, the yardage ended up looking impressive for the defense, but how great were they really in that game against Utah? I know they played a decent game, but I thought the stats looked a little better than the actual performance on the field. This game, the stats matched the performance. There was a definite tone set by that defense out there, and it looks like something that the Gators can actually build on here. I'm not sitting here thinking we got an elite defense just yet here. Well, I'm not ready to make any bold proclamations with Tennessee coming to town, but I'll tell you what, man, this certainly looks like a different product than what we witnessed last year.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a completely different product than what we witnessed last year from the standpoint of this defense is just always aggressive. Like there were times last year where the defense was passive, allowed the offense to dictate what it was doing, and still gave up big plays. And if you're going to be passive and you're going to play a bunch of zones and you're going to run those simulated pressures where you only got 4 guys rushing and you're not going to get home and your guys can't hold up in zone coverage, well, you might as well just blitz at that point. And Austin Armstrong says, to hell with it, I'm going to blitz. And there were a couple of times where he had human Milan out in coverage where I'm like, I don't know about this. Let's let Princely rush the passer. But yeah, I mean, I think so. Even if you look at the Utah game, I think they gave up something like 5.5 yards per attempt. That's like 45th, would have been 45th last year overall. I think that's probably about right for the defense. I think there are going to be times where there are games where you get out there and you go, God, it just feels like we can't get off the field. But even in that Utah game, they were 3 of 13 or Utah was 3 of 13 on third down conversions. And I think McNeese was 2 of 12. So when you think about third and Grantham and you think about third downs last year, which were just awful, Florida's getting off the field this year on third down, which is, I think, a big deal. Now, the difference is they don't have the explosion on offense. So, last year, Florida lost this game to Tennessee 38-33. This game, if Tennessee puts up 38 points, Florida's in trouble because they're not going to score 38 points. But I think the defense is in a position to maybe have them in a game that's a little bit closer than that. There are 2 things specifically that I take out of this game from a defensive perspective. Is Shamar James, we knew he was good. He's a stud. This guy's going to be an all-SEC linebacker, I think, this year if he stays healthy. He's already got 19 tackles, 2 tackles for loss. He's all over the field, and he is one of the reasons why they're outstanding in the run game. If you go back and look at the Utah game, I was looking at a third down play where they allowed the quarterback to run in unmolested, Barnes on third down, but the second down play, the running back had a free run to the end zone, and James just came out of nowhere and knocked him down. Nice open field tackle and forced a 3rd and 4 that obviously Florida wasn't able to get the stop. But if you've got a guy like James who can go sideline to sideline, your defense is going to be better just by virtue of that. The guy I think who really flashed in this game against McNeese was Scooby Williams. And so if Florida, and I think a lot of us were kind of surprised, I was certainly, that you got Taraja Mitchell, you have you have some of the other guys at linebacker that you brought in specifically to take that position. You had Manny Nunnery and those sorts of things.
Spurlock.
And you had Spurlock. and I really thought Taraja Mitchell was going to get a lot of run. He's got 3 tackles so far. Scooby Williams has 5 tackle for loss, a sack, and that was a thunderous sack against McNeese State. But the thing I think that's most impressive about it is he was aggressive and he did what he was supposed to do the minute he was supposed to do it and was really decisive. And I think one of the things that's different this year for the defense, and I think was very apparent against McNeese State, is they may make some mistakes, but they were decisive. And last year it felt like they weren't decisive at all, that they were all sort of sitting there on eggshells waiting for a mistake to happen. Now, look, McNeese State is obviously, not an offense that you're really fearing all that much. And so this week, completely different test. And Austin Armstrong's defenses have given up a bunch of big plays historically when he was at Southern Miss. Obviously gives up the big play in the first play against Utah, but also gives up the big run there after the penalty for the 2 number 3s on the field that then ends up being a touchdown as well. So 14 of the points that Florida gave up in that game were directly tied to big plays. They also gave it the touchdown after the interception, so didn't get the force the field goal after the quick change. I think, and again, that's the other thing I can say, maybe a negative point about McNeese is they get the turnover, obviously don't have the starters in, but still quick change turns into a touchdown. They aren't able to stop them and hold them to a field goal or hold them to a turnover on downs. So there's stuff to still improve on, but there's the flashes that we're starting to see. I thought Jakeem Jackson looked really good on the outside. When he was one-on-one on the outside, there was a play where probably he'll get the interception in the future. Just got the pass breakup in this one. Still not getting a ton of pressure from the front 4 when it's just the front 4. That's going to have to change, particularly this week. Not getting pressure with the front 4 is going to be a death sentence against Tennessee. I think they will hit a bunch of big plays if you have to constantly bring pressure. But look, I think given where we were last year, where we were just looking for improvement, the Utah game was improvement, but like you said, a little bit smoke and mirrors. McNeese State shows improvement as well, though an overmatched opponent. This week, again, is an opportunity for Florida's defense and Austin Armstrong to say, hey, like, we're not the weak link that we were last year. We're now able to sort of be contributors to what Florida's going to do. And look, Florida's offense clearly going to take a step back this year without Anthony Richardson. I think we've seen that in both games, actually. But if the defense can take a step forward, then there's no reason the team can't be just as successful as it was last year, maybe a little bit more.
Hey, huge opportunity for Austin Armstrong and this defense to make a statement this weekend. I know Mr. Joe Milton's got a few things to prove himself, but man, if they come out and play well against Tennessee, that is definitely going to reshape the narrative on what the defense here is at Florida. All right, let's move on to the next topic here, Will. We're going to revisit a few preseason expectations through 2 games. Let's start off with the offensive line, the running game. I know we just talked a little bit about them here with the McNeese State game. Obviously, the way the Utah game shook out, you talked about lack of commitment toward the running game. Really, some people can look at that and go, well, we were down in the third quarter and we kind of had to abandon that game plan. Well, if you look at the first half, that didn't seem to really be the game plan at all against Utah. So it is great that Napier comes out and makes that statement about the running game. I think these guys are who we thought they were in the running game. And I think this offensive line, let them get into that rhythm. It's a little bit of rhythm. And it's a little bit, hey, it might be a little slow that first and second quarter, but Florida's going to be the type of team with these physical backs. How many times did you count Montrell Johnson actually going to the ground the other night? Will, it wasn't a whole lot. The guys just can run through. They will wear you down. And if you could throw 3 quality backs at any team over the course of a game, they will wear you down. The other thing that Napier likes to talk about is complementary football. And this is going to be something that helps not only Graham Mertz, a quarterback like Graham Mertz, but it's going to help the defense stay off the field for a while. Florida can eat up the clock, be the type of team to keep Tennessee on the sideline, for example. Hey, I think they need to be totally committed to this running game, and I think the offensive line showed that they are quite capable against McNeese State here, and I'd like to see a commitment to that going forward, Will. But in terms of the offensive line running game, any adjustment from your preseason expectations so far?
Yeah, I thought it was really bad against Utah. I think if I was to give an overall grade for the offensive line right now, we're in the running game, we're talking like C-, D+, like somewhere in that range. You're supposed to dominate McNeese State. Like, and I've been thinking about this, and I think I even wrote it in the preview article that's up on Read and Reaction right now, is that if last week had been a bye instead of a game, how would we feel about the running game coming off that Utah game? We'd be like, oh my God, it's a disaster, right? So the fact that you just had essentially what amounts to a spring game and you dominated McNeese State doesn't make me feel a whole lot better. Like, they're going to have to come out and prove it. Now,
Right.
that doesn't mean they can't, but it doesn't mean that I'm sitting here going, well, that we've solved every problem now that we played this game against McNeese. No, you put up a data point against an overmatched opponent where you went out and dominated in the way you were supposed to. But you're a running team. You're supposed to be able to dominate in that capacity against good teams as well as McNeese State. And they got absolutely stuffed when they tried to run the ball against Utah. Now, they didn't have the commitment to the running game that they needed to have in that game.
Right.
They didn't.
Was that more of the problem, or was the execution itself more of the problem against Utah? Because how many carries did Johnson and Etienne get in that first half? It was
yeah. I mean, Johnson kicked Napier's dog
amount.
before the game. Yeah, Johnson kicked Napier's dog before the game or something. He got like 1 carry for 3 yards. But,
yeah, that's what they didn't even try to run the ball that first half.
But I mean, there's a reason why they didn't try, right? And that makes me wonder, what did Napier know about his offensive line going into that game? And was he trying to essentially protect them from something that he knew was a problem against a big time opponent? So look, I'd love to be optimistic coming off McNeese. I think I'm more optimistic coming off of McNeese than I would be had it been a bye week. But I think in many ways, that's my wishful thinking. It's not like actual real football analysis, because I mean, it would be like there was something on Twitter today that about a game last year that IMG was playing that they stopped at halftime because they were up like 98-0. And I'm like, that's what this is, right? This is like if you had it's like if you had the Patriots come down and play Alabama. Like, the Patriots should dominate them every freaking time. And that's what it is when you have a SEC team go play an FCS team. So I'm glad they dominated. It could be worse had they not. Then I'd feel worse about things. But I mean, I'd also give them an F for the Utah game in terms of the overall running game and offensive line and coaching that goes into that. So look, I mean, they redeemed themselves a little bit in a way they should have against McNeese. They couldn't do anything other than play the opponent who was in front of them, but they haven't proven anything yet. And this is an opportunity to do it this week. But I mean, in hell, if they go out and dominate, awesome. I'll give them all sorts of kudos for dominating on the ground against a Tennessee team. It's a pretty quality opponent, but you got to go out and actually prove it, because beating McNeese isn't really something that I'm like, ooh, look, we're going to put a feather in our cap and say, woohoo, we did that.
I'd like to see, regardless of the defensive game plan, like, we just don't have an elite passing game where it's like, oh, well, the defense is giving us this read, so let's pass in this situation. Sure, once in a while. But with the type of running game we have, with the type of backs we have, just throw it at the wall if you have to. If they're lining up to stop the run, commit to it. There needs to be a certain number. Like, I mean, what was it when Percy played here? Urban would always say 20 touches, right? You got to have 20 touches for Percy. Like, have a commitment to that number. And just make them stop you. Now, I would love to see Florida, instead of us talking about someone else dictating what we're going to do, we come out, we dictate what we're going to do, and they got to deal with it. I would love to see that type of attitude from this team going forward. That wasn't the attitude against Utah, and we saw how that looked. Speaking of that,
and then I was going to say, you need to have actions off of that then, right? So one of the things I think Seth Varnador on his stuff over at Varnador Films was showing that
writes for Gators Breakdown on the new website for Gators Breakdown too, so check that out.
Yeah, he was over there. I can't remember which one it was on, whether it was Varnador Films or a Gators Breakdown, but he was showing that on a bunch of the different pass plays that Florida had, they had 2 screen actions on offense when they had screens called, right? So, and it looked like probably that was a read that Mertz had, but in many ways, having those multiple screen options is a way of slowing down the defense when they're coming after you, because they were up there to stop the run. You run a play action, they still got a bunch of guys up tight. You don't have time to go take a deep shot just because the offense the offensive line hasn't been able to generate time for that. And it doesn't look like Mertz is going to be the guy who's going to hit a bunch of those deep shots as well. So you set up those double screens off of that. The reverses to Wilson are important as well, because they don't have the ability to hold the back end defensive end with a read option the same way that they could with Anthony Richardson or even Emory Jones. And so holding that backside defensive end by having Trey Wilson come around the edge a few times, all of a sudden opens that up. So there's some window dressing that they can do in order to sort of get back to where they are. But again, it's bread and butter. When there's 8 minutes left in the game and Florida gets the ball and they're up by 3, this team is going to have to be able to run against 8 and 9 man fronts to put the game away. And so if you're going to have to do that to put the game away, then you ought to at least try it in the first and second quarter. And sort of what I said earlier in the episode, by the time the middle of the third quarter, start of the fourth quarter comes around, you want Tennessee to want you to throw the ball. You want Tennessee to be sitting there going, please don't run this down my throat again. Like, I'm tired. I don't want to deal with
the
this.
tone.
But the only way you do that is if you've been willing to sacrifice a few things in the first half in order to get things done. Now, this is where the defensive improvement becomes critical, right? Because if you feel like you have to get maximum value out of every drive out there, maybe you don't invest in the running game early on, even if it means you're going to have to punt because you feel like you got to get points, as opposed to what you might do is say, look, we're preparing for the fourth quarter right now here in the first, and maybe we'll pop this run and get the first down on 3rd and 3, but we're okay not getting it and punting the ball away because our defense is going to get the stop. So in many ways, this is sort of the complementary aspects of the team and how they're both going to have to step up.
Did you, and you're talking about motions off the run game with Wilson. It made me think of the clip I saw on Twitter with the way Mike McDaniel, we'll throw a little NFL in here for everybody. The way Mike McDaniel was using Tyreek Hill against the Chargers, the types of motions he had him in, where he's basically on a dead sprint by the time the ball is snapped on so many snaps. So with the guy with that kind of speed, that is just going to put the defense in a tough spot. So there are absolutely, now that's in the passing game there, Will, but you can do those type of play actions off of in the run game too. You can kind of like create those type of reads where the linebacker has to drift out to catch, to cover a guy, and you end up handing it off up the middle and testing them up the middle. So I think there's a lot of different things they can do with that in the running game that they keep that commitment there, Will. But hey, through 2 games so far, thoughts on Graham Mertz? I know just another statistically steady performance against McNeese State here. I didn't see anything particularly special in this one from Mertz, but at the same time, 14-17, it's just steady numbers. Didn't really make a gigantic mistake or anything like that. Just a steady performance in this type of game, and really that's kind of what we got. We just got the guy who can come out and give you a steady performance, and against the big teams, we'll see what he does type of thing. That's kind of, I haven't changed my opinion on Mertz at all. I think he's about meeting expectations for me through 2 games.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's what I said last week on Stand Up Holler. As I said, he's not the problem, but he's not the solution. And that's the solution is feed 2, feed 7. And they're going to have to do that. And maybe feed 3, given Eugene Wilson and some of the things that he's able to do out there.
An appetizer for 20.
Yeah, an appetizer for 20. But look, Mertz has weapons around him. He's going to have to take advantage of those. He's not a downfield passer. He's not getting a ton of he's not a difference maker. He wasn't even really a difference maker in this McNeese game. And so I don't think we should expect him to be. I think it's unfair to cast those expectations on him and say, you're going to be out there with a QB rating of 160 in these big time games. He's going to be around 140, maybe 130. He needs to minimize turnovers. The turnover against Utah was an absolute killer. Irrespective of whose feet you lay that fault to, that can't happen deep in your own red zone. Can't have those turnovers. So he can't fumble it. He's going to have to do a little bit better job of getting the ball out when there's pressure. All those sorts of things. But this offense is not going to rise and fall with Graham Mertz. This offense is going to rise and fall with Montrell Johnson and Trevor Etienne, and that's just the reality of things. So I mean, I'm not disappointed in the way Mertz has played, but I'm not excited. There will never be a time where I bounce my grandkid on my knee and tell him about the Graham Mertz era at Florida, and that's just sort of the way it is.
The old grandkid on the knee test from Will Miles. That's how you know if you've accomplished something at the University of Florida. That's good. All right, let's switch over to the defense here. Which unit of the defense has been a pleasant surprise so far for you?
Oh, linebackers, no question. I mean,
that last segment,
I already mentioned James and Williams, but even that, I mean, Derek Wingo has done a nice job when he's been in there. I think there's, it's not as though there's like guys that I'm sitting there going, oh yeah, anybody beyond James and Williams are flashing, but you've now got James playing at an all SEC level. You've got Williams starting to flash. And if those things can get combined with just adequate pressure up front to keep the linebackers clean, all of a sudden now you're going to be a really good defense against the run. which is going to then force defenses or force offenses into third and long. And I think that, honestly, Armstrong, one of the best things that he said earlier this season before the season started in one of the press conferences was that essentially you make third down stops on first and second down, that by getting teams into 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10, that's how you get third down stops. That if it's 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, you've already put yourself so far behind the 8 ball that you're just not going to be able to get those conversions. I'll tell you, one thing we haven't seen is I don't recall like a 3rd and 8 or a 3rd and 9 where Florida had somebody dead to rights and the play turned into something where you're like, how the hell did they get a first down on that one, where somebody's running all over the place. Guys are in the right position. And so look, there's still some work to be done in terms of physicality of the team, especially up front. I think the defense on the back end still struggles with coverage from time to time, but given what we're seeing at the linebacker position, I think that we should have a lot of not like this is going to be a top 10 defense, but this is no longer a unit where the ball gets kicked over. Like, oh crap. Like there's 7 points. Like last year, every time the ball got punted, like, Florida got stopped on a 3rd down. And we're like, oh, well, now we're going to be down by 7.
Well, Tennessee last year, great example. You felt like we have to score almost every drive to have a shot here.
Yep.
And
Now I will say that I hope that Billy Napier has that attitude when he comes in to this one, because I do think that look, I think Tennessee, even though they've had some offensive struggles the first couple of weeks, I think Tennessee's a strong offensive team. And I think Heupel's going to have him prepared. I guarantee he wasn't showing anything significant against Austin Peay last week.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's so there's been a lot of talk about Joe Milton and his yards per attempt. And rightly so, because he's averaging 6.8 yards per attempt, 6.7 against Virginia and 6.9 against Austin Peay. But one thing that's not factored into that is he had Brew McCoy for an 80-yard touchdown on the 3rd drive against Virginia, and McCoy just completely dropped it on a bomb. And if you add that 80 yards in, all of a sudden he averages 9.4 yards per attempt against Virginia, and the narrative is completely out the window. So that, to me, is going to be the question: is they're going to have some opportunities to make some big plays. Is Florida going to step up? Will the defensive back be able to stay with the receiver and have a pass defense or a pass breakup? Is he going to get beat completely and a guy like McCoy just drops it? Or is he going to get beat completely and all of a sudden it turns into an 80-yard touchdown? Because McCoy doesn't drop that ball twice, right? Like that's 99 out of 100 times he catches that ball. So we've already gotten that drop.
McCoy come down with a catch where he was wide open last season in this game. I think we saw one of those.
So, yeah. So anyway, I think there are. Now the good news is that we shouldn't have random plays where guys are just running free for no damn reason like we did last year. So
we could have used 2 number 3s on the field for that coverage. Too. That could have been good. Hey, speaking of Milton here, I really think this is. I know we're our Florida Gators show. We focus more on the Gators, but if you step back and look at this from the SEC point of view or the national point of view, I think people are going to be tuning into this game. Who is Joe Milton? I think that's going to be the main question that comes out of this game, and I would flip that for the Gators to say, is this defense for real? Because this is a real statement. This is a chance to make a statement against this offense. We saw Tennessee light up college football. We know Josh Heupel knows how to run an offense, but I think there's been a lot of hype around Joe Milton. And this was a game you and I circled in the offseason, and we've been talking about this one. First off, it's a helmet game, meaning Tennessee, like Lee Corso used to always call that. When I was a kid growing up in Columbus, Ohio State could not beat Michigan for the life of them. They just every year was just a John Cooper era, could not beat Michigan. And Lee Corso said, it's the helmets, man. It's the helmet. It's a helmet game. So I think there is a little bit of that with Florida and Tennessee, where Tennessee can just look at the helmets and look at the swamp. Hey, you haven't won here since 2003. You're going to be hearing that all week. But that only carries so much weight. But there's a little bit of weight in there, I feel like. But for Joe Milton to be anointed as this Heisman Trophy type of potential in the offseason by some people talked about this guy very highly. And look, all the tools are there, but they're out of high school. He's a highly touted recruit out of high school. We haven't seen it for a full season with Milton. And hey, do I think if anyone could get Milton right, it's Heupel? Yeah, I do. Do I think that his Florida defense has a ton to prove? Yes, but so does Joe Milton. And that's why I think that there's a ton of pressure on him coming into this game. Luckily for him, he's surrounded with a ton of weapons on this Tennessee offense, to your point. And I do think the Vols are going to be a scary offense again this year. But what are your expectations for this defensive matchup against Tennessee for the Florida Gators?
So this one is one where I think Austin Armstrong is going to earn his keep, because if you look at how Virginia and Austin Peay tried to defend Tennessee, they basically put 6 men in the box, and then they just had 5 defensive backs at the sticks the entire game. There was a 2nd and 4 against Virginia that I've got in my preview article where there wasn't a guy within 10 yards of any of the receivers on a 2nd and 4. So Milton just throws the ball out to his wide receiver out in the flat. The guy runs for 6 yards. It's an easy first down. He wasn't immensely accurate on those balls out in the flat, so those end up being a 6-yard run instead of like a 15-yard run. So if you're a solid tackling team, there will probably be opportunities to come up and make those sorts of plays. The thing is Austin Armstrong doesn't run those sorts of defenses, right? He doesn't run defenses where you basically put a shell out there and say, hey, defensive line, go stop the run. But if you look at it, Jabari Small and Jalen Wright, so Small's run for 6.2 yards per rush, Jalen Wright's run for 9.3 yards per rush. The fact there hasn't been any, and that's not just the game against Austin Peay, it's also against Virginia. Now, obviously, Virginia lost to an FCS team last week, so it's not like they're really all that great.
Hey, James Madison, they're up in FBS.
Yeah, James Madison's up in.
They made the leap. They're FBS.
Right. Non-Power 5 team.
Sunbelt, baby.
All right. Well, so they've beaten Virginia Tech before. I guess I shouldn't be too downtrodden on James Madison. Plus, I used to drive by there every time I'd leave Virginia Tech and go up to DC. But anyway, Jalen Wright ran for 9.3 yards per rush. Jabari Small at 6.2. They've done that against both entities, mainly because teams have said we're not going to let Joe Milton beat us. We're going to make him take stuff underneath. We're going to make Tennessee run the ball, and we're not going to let them run us out of it. So like the first drive against Virginia, I think it was 8 plays and it was 5 rushes up the middle against depleted fronts or against limited fronts. And then it was 3 swing passes. Like that was how they went down the field and scored their initial touchdown. Now, even then, the play action eventually made some of the defensive backs bite for that play against Brew McCoy that I mentioned, where he dropped an easy 80-yard touchdown pass later on in that game. So that to me is going to be the questions. That's not in Armstrong's DNA to sit there and just lay back and say, I'm not going to bring any pressure and those sorts of things. But I'm curious as to whether they're going to, at least early on, say, look, I think that is a sound strategy. So I think it was the first 4 drives for Tennessee were, hold on, I've got it written down here somewhere. So, the first 4 drives were, they were all extended, first 4 touchdown drives. They were 8 plays, 13 plays, 9 plays, and 10 plays against Virginia. Now, obviously, those all turned into touchdowns, so that's a problem for the Cavaliers. But what you're doing when you play a defense like that is you're daring Tennessee to go down the field and not make mistakes. And so that to me is the question that Austin Armstrong is going to have to answer is he going to basically say, I trust that my front 6 with a nickel behind it is going to be able to stop the run. And so I'm going to load up on the back end and make Joe Milton throw underneath. And I think I'm going to be able to get a bunch of 3rd down stops. Or is he going to say, I don't necessarily trust my front 6 to get the stops against the run. I'm going to bring guys up. I'm going to force Milton to take deep shots, and I'm going to trust my guys on the outside to limit those sorts of things going down the field. And I think Milton may be inaccurate going down the field, and that's where Milton's going to have to prove something. So I think what you need to look for in this game is not like, is Joe Milton going to prove something? Is Austin Armstrong trying to make Joe Milton win the game? Or is he trying to make Joe Milton go underneath and have other people win the game, including Jabari Small and Jalen Wright at running back? Were it me, I think I'd try to probably do the latter, where I'm making the running backs try to beat me and I'm not trying to give up big plays to Milton. But that is not Armstrong's DNA. That's not his defense. I think he's going to do the other part, which means Joe Milton, if he hits 3 40-plus plays through the air, Tennessee wins this game easily. If he overthrows the guy when he has those opportunities, then it's a much closer ball game. I think that's probably what this comes down to.
If you check out the first 2 Tennessee games, they were explosive on special teams. Will, we don't have any weaknesses on special teams though, right?
Nah, that should be no problem for us.
Jeez. Tennessee, plenty of firepower, plenty of offensive playmakers. The running game strong there. Milton definitely has something to prove, in my opinion. Will just outlined it very well there. Let's talk about the offensive side of the ball for the Gators. Will, how you feeling about that matchup against the Vols?
I mean, so I think it depends on what they decide to do. I think Tennessee is thin on defense. Everybody talks about their front seven, and they're right. Their front seven is pretty gifted, but they have nobody behind those guys with any sort of experience. It's all freshmen and seniors because the 2021 recruiting class was just decimated by departures, and rightfully so, right? That was the Jeremy Pruitt, McMuffin scandal, and all of a sudden, all of a sudden the recruiting class that committed has a brand new coach. I get why those guys left, but you can't just like laugh off the fact that an entire recruiting class is gone and that it was a recruiting class from 3 years ago. Yeah, they've tried to fill that with the transfer portal and that's all well and good, but even over the last 3 years, they've only brought in 12 guys on defense total. So they haven't been able to make up the number of guys, because you'd usually bring in about 12 guys in a recruiting class, 12 or 13 guys in a recruiting class on the defensive side of the ball. They brought in like 8 over the last couple of years and then another 3 or 4 this year to get up to that 12 number. So they have numbers, but they don't necessarily have the same level of experience or the expectation where those guys are going to deliver. So they're reliant on the upperclassmen who've come back and are effective up front. So this goes back to Billy Napier. Are you willing to say, I'm going to try to run over you in the first quarter and the second quarter, irrespective of the front, irrespective of whether it's successful, because I know that with the humidity and with the swamp and with all the energy that everybody's going to expend early on being hyped up, that I'm going to be able to take advantage of you in the third quarter and the fourth quarter because you're going to be run down. If he does that, again, I think this game is close. If he doesn't do that, I think Tennessee has has an opportunity to stop Florida because Graham Mertz, like I said, is not the problem, but not the solution. And so you're looking at 17 points if you put the ball in his hands and say, go win me the ball game. I don't think that's the right thing to do. I think you need 20 carries out of Etienne and Montrell Johnson and potentially Webb there in the first half. I think you need to just pound it. And that means you might have to make some 3rd down and 3 conversions, right? Where you hit the tight end and then immediately go back to run. Okay, quick throw, run, quick throw. You're going to have to make a couple of those 1st down conversions. That's where Mertz can really be effective. But if you're running play action after a couple of runs and trying to take a deep shot, I think that's probably the wrong thing to do early on. I think you need to wear down the defense because Tennessee's issue isn't talent for their starters. Tennessee's issue is that when the starters have to come off the field because they need a blow, there's nothing proven behind it. And so I think that's where Florida can gain an advantage, but they're going to have to use the advantage they have to get there.
Well, so overall, how are you feeling about this game?
Not good. I mean, I think if you look at it and say, do I trust Joe Milton versus Graham Mertz? Milton has given me reason to question that more than I would have coming into the year, but I still think he's more of a difference maker than Mertz is. I think Tennessee's running game has looked really good so far this year.
Milton can run too. He's a sneaky good runner too.
Absolutely. And I'm just waiting for the backbreaking turnover from Mertz. Like we saw it against Utah. There wasn't an opportunity against McNeese. We'll see if he does it against Tennessee. But, you've watched all that Wisconsin film where they were playing Ohio State and Michigan. Like when people get in his face, all of a sudden things speed up.
Another reason to commit to the running game.
Well, absolutely.
Go all in.
But, are we going to Treon Harris this game against Georgia where we just like run the ball and let him throw like 6 times?
Let's do it.
So, I mean, I think it's incredibly, it's absolutely possible Tennessee puts up 50. It's also possible Florida's defense keeps this game close. It's possible that Billy Napier runs the ball, makes a lot of 4th down conversions, and keeps the ball out of Tennessee's offense's hands, and the game is a lot closer. But if you were to ask me like propositions, what do I think the percentage winning? It's probably, I think ESPN has it like 55-45. I think it's more 75-25 Tennessee. I think Tennessee is and this is from a guy who wrote an article a couple of weeks ago, in terms of Tennessee's going to take a step back. Yeah, they're going to take a step back, but Florida going from Anthony Richardson to Graham Mertz is taking a step back as well. And so, look, there's a reason why Florida was picked by some people to go 3-9. There's a reason why the over-under was 5.5. It's because that's what the general consensus is for this team. They're going to have to prove us wrong. And the first data point against Utah didn't give me a whole lot of confidence. And look, I want to believe what I saw against McNeese State. but I have a hard time believing what I saw against McNeese State. So I hope they go out and they prove me wrong. I hope they punch Tennessee in the mouth and this ends up like a 35-10 win. And we go, haha, they can't win in the swamp. You guys thought you were back. It's Butch Jones again over there and Josh Heupel. And, sort of go forward with that. And that is a possibility. But the fact that, the likelihood that Tennessee wins 35-10, I think, is way higher than the likelihood that Florida wins 35-10, which means all the little small things are going to make a difference. And this is where I go back to Napier and sort of the value prop that he was going to bring operational excellence that we really haven't seen yet. He's going to have to make some decisions that turn this game in Florida's favor, whether it's fourth down conversions, whether it's not trusting a kicker who's going to blow a 30-yard field goal, whether it's actually fair catching a kickoff so you get the ball to 25 instead of getting tackled inside your own territory, or whether it's having all the guys with the right numbers on the field. Like, those things are all going to have to be completely taken care of. Florida will have to do everything right to win this game. I think Tennessee can make some mistakes and still win, so that's probably the difference.
You got a prediction?
Yeah, I got Tennessee win 31-21.
31-21.
I think it's going to be close, but I think Mertz is going to have a turnover late, either the third or the fourth, or early in the fourth. And Tennessee will convert into a touchdown. And then it'll be, hey, we're down by 10. We got to go 2-minute offense. And it takes us 7 minutes to drive down the field.
So you sound a little like me too, where you sound like you're having a little bit of a battle with your head and your heart this week, where the heart says you want to believe what you saw against McNeese State, but the head's like going, got to evaluate some of the data that's actually been put out there.
Well, the head says that last week the McNeese game didn't matter to me at all. Right? He just looked at it and said, I'm not going to know anything about this team until they play Tennessee. And then they go out and they play McNeese, and I go, well, okay, maybe I should believe some of that stuff. Like, but it's like it's like the person, it's like Lucy and Charlie Brown, right? Like, Lucy actually let Charlie Brown kick the ball against McNeese State, but that's just, but it wasn't really an important moment yet. And the question, I am like guarding my heart that ball is going to get pulled against us against Tennessee, and we're all going to come out going, oh. I want to set expectations that if Napier pulls this out, I think he's done an excellent job of preparing the team and getting them ready to win this ball game. This is not a inferior opponent where you're going out and going, this is old school. This is Tennessee, where they've been struggling for a decade. Like, look, Heupel's a good coach. I think Tennessee is going to win 8, 9, 10 games per year under him. I'm doubtful they're going to get to national championship level, but beating an 8, 9, or 10 win SEC team is a significant accomplishment for Florida, given where they are right now and given how they looked a couple of weeks ago. So my expectations are Florida will lose, which means if they win, I'm going to be hyped as all get out next week. But look, I mean, Napier, it was something I said after the Utah game, and I really believe it, is there's been a lot of talk about operational excellence. There's been a lot of talk about process. There's been a lot of talk about, getting people in the right positions to win. There's been a lot of talk about, hey, this is a guy who's going to make sure everyone's prepared and that the operational parts of the game are taken care of. We got to see it, right? And part of seeing it is getting a W. Because the SEC is great and we can have moral victories and we can see improvement and progress and all that sort of crap. But at the end of the day, like I was on, like you said, I was in Vegas and I forgot to download some stuff. So I wound up watching Swamp Kings again on the way back. And there's a portion there where Urban Meyer is saying, you lose 3 games in the SEC your first year at Florida and nobody likes you. You lose 3 games again in the SEC your second year at Florida. You're not the coach here anymore. And like, I'm not saying that Napier's going to be gone after this year, but I'm saying that attitude and that level of desperation is, I think, something that we need to see because you need to win some SEC games. You need to put some W's on the board. Just like going out there and looking halfway decent against an opponent isn't good enough anymore. And there are some rivalries coming up, and we're going to have look. I get what you said last, a half hour ago, talking about the rankings of the rivals. But Florida should be a top 15 team if you're building the program to where it needs to be, which means you got to start beating these teams that, look, I think Tennessee is going to end up in the top 25 at the end of the year. I'd be very surprised if they wound up in the top 10. So we're looking at a team somewhere probably between 15 and 25 in terms of how good they are. And since that's where we are, that's what we, that's what we need to see.
Yeah. I think this is a big time chance for this team to make a statement this season. You got Tennessee coming into the swamp on your home field Saturday night. But just like I need to see Florida prove it, I need to see that defense prove it. The thing that the McNeese State game did for me was it showed me that they can execute. They're capable of executing in the fashion in which we think they can. I know it was McNeese State. I'm not reading too much into that game. And before I say anything further about this game, if we play the way we did against Utah in terms of the sloppiness, if we would have played Tennessee that night, I think Tennessee would have put up a half 100 on us. They would have put up 50 easy, and we would have lost that game by 40 instead of a couple touchdowns. All right. Utah is basically the Iowa of the Mountain Time Zone. All right. So we were lucky we weren't playing a big time offense on that night. So this could get away. This could get away from us at some point. However, I loved what I saw last weekend too. I love the running game, and I think there will be commitment to it. I think we did learn our lesson from week 1, and I'm going to call it close, Will. I'm going to call it close, but give me 24-21 Gators. I think Joe Milton's got to prove something here, and I think if you want to talk about the pressure, all the pressure in the world is on that guy to prove something, and you're coming into the swamp to prove it against the Gators. I'd like to see it. I'd like to see it. So I'm going to go with an upset in this one. I think the Gators get it done. 24-21 commitment to that run game. Pull it out late.
Well, and for those of you mad at me, I picked Florida to beat Utah, and the first one was wrong. So picking Tennessee in this one. Hopefully I'm wrong, and you can come back at me afterwards.
Yeah, I picked Utah, and I thought I've been struggling with this one all week. But I really liked what I saw out of the offensive line last week, and I hope they can carry something over in the total commitment to that run game, where it might not be super pretty early. It's also contingent on Mertz not making a huge mistake. Will got to stay out of trouble there. So got to see them run the ball well. Got to see Mertz not make the mistake and the defense step up a little bit. But let's see it, man. 24-21 Gators. All right, let's finish up. Just quick. We'll keep this one quick at the end here. Early season struggles for the SEC. Obviously, South Carolina losing to North Carolina that Saturday night. Florida going into Utah. Can't forget that one. Obviously, LSU, Florida State, the Knowles cruising, and then Texas goes into Tuscaloosa and knocks off the Tide last Saturday night here. You reading too much into this, Will, or is it just they're UNC, good team, FSU, good team, Texas, good team? I mean, you had Texas in the playoff in the preseason magazine. I was considering doing the same until I saw you had picked Texas, and I backed off of that because I didn't want both of us to buy in on Texas that hard. But I liked what I saw at Texas early. Did I think they were going to go into Tuscaloosa and get it done? No, I did not. So that's quite impressive for Sarkisian and the Horns to get that done that early. There's some great plays in the passing game there from Texas in particular, but I know Bama actually looks human. This is what was amazing when I was watching that game the other night. When I was looking at Milroe struggling a little bit at times, I was like, why? This is the amazing part about the run Saban has been on since essentially the 2009 season. At this point, we're entering into our third decade of Saban dominating at Alabama. Will, that he's dominated over 3 different decades here. I don't understand how you just don't have a down game once in a while. You can be a great team that has a down game. Think of the Jake Fromm South Carolina game, right? You just don't see that from Bama much. And again, I don't know if it was a down game so much as this Texas team might just be really good and went into Bama and did what they had to do. So are you reading too much into the early season SEC struggles out of the league here, or were these just tough matchups?
No, I mean, I think what you're finding is that other teams are catching up to the SEC when they're able to have outstanding quarterback play. So Ewers was awesome against Alabama, and that shows, right? And Texas has done a really nice job of recruiting over the last, 3 or 4 years. Yeah. And so all of a sudden now the recruiting battle is close. And you got an edge at quarterback. And Milroe was okay, but he wasn't great. Made some huge turnovers in that game. Alabama comes back and takes the lead, and then their defense just couldn't stop anybody. And look, that has not typically been the way Nick Saban's teams have operated. I think when you look at Florida State versus LSU, that game looked really close in the first half. LSU just could not convert in the red zone and probably could have had a much bigger lead against Florida State than they did. Jaden Daniels is one of those guys I looked at and said, was last year a little bit of a mirage? Is he going to come back to where he was when he was at Arizona State? I think that sort of happened. And I think one of the things that Florida State has sort of proven is that the Jordan Travis jump last year wasn't fake, and that he's probably going to be able to maintain that ability this year. But again, we're talking high level quarterback play. And you look at the teams that have struggled, Alabama with Milroe, you look at Clemson with Klubnik really struggling as well. You look at Texas A&M with Connor Wegman, who's been okay, but not great. Obviously one of the reasons that they lost wasn't just Wegman. The defense was terrible against Miami, but Florida with Mertz, right? I mean, the quarterback play, not great. So when we look, Utah's the only team that I can really remember out of memory that's got a huge win over somebody without a huge amount of quarterback, without great quarterback play, right? But like USC has Caleb Williams, Georgia is just hasn't played anybody, isn't going to. Ohio State has looked kind of shaky because of quarterback position. You got Drake May at North Carolina, you got Ewers at Texas, Bo Nix at Oregon.
Tyler Van Dyke at Miami. I was saving Miami because I wanted to talk about how messy Texas A&M might get in the near future.
You got Van Dyke at Miami. You've got Penix at Washington. You've got Travis at Florida State. And then, as you sort of drop down, but I'm naming like 10 teams in terms of quarterbacks before I really get to SEC teams. I think they're better than the best quarterback in the SEC plays for Arkansas, which is actually a problem for Florida this year because they're going to be in a major disadvantage.
One of our winnable games
when they play Arkansas. So, look, quarterback play covers a ton of sins. And one of the reasons Texas has struggled is because they have not been able to develop an elite quarterback to go with the talent that they brought in there. But look, Charlie Strong brought in very good talent there. Tom Herman brought in very good talent there. So you get Sarkisian coming in. He was kind of working from like a Ron Zook baseline when you think about the talent level, rather than Billy Napier coming in dealing with the McElwain and then Mullen baseline of talent. So he walked into already having a bunch of talent, and what he needed to do was find the quarterback. Ewers, obviously in the Alabama game last year, goes down early. I think they win that game if he doesn't go down in that game.
Yeah.
Bryce Young, pulls a rabbit out of his hat and manages to get that win. Now they're proving, hey, we're equivalent to that. So look, college football goes in cycles. I think one of the things that we've looked at, and Nick Saban sort of broken our minds in terms of the fact that things move in cycles. I think I even texted you about this last week, which is that when you go back and look at like the FSU teams in the 90s, like that's about a 12-year cycle of that team truly being elite. Now, there were a few years on the back end where Bobby Bowden, there started to be some grumblings about the program. And then they switched over to Jimbo Fisher. You look at Clemson, they're getting up on about year 12 of Dabo Swinney, and now things seem to be sort of decaying a little bit. You look at Florida under Steve Spurrier, you wonder, did Spurrier leave in 2001 or after 2001 because he kind of sensed that things might be on the downflow? Obviously, one of the reasons people talk about is, well, winning isn't good enough, but did he look at it and say winning isn't going to be good enough? And then Saban's been at Alabama forever, but we may be starting to see that tail end of that decline as well, just in terms of, can he develop, like, does he love it as much as he used to? And can he convey that to the players? And look, I think 10 years at one place, whether it's a job, whether it's a coaching position, is a long time. And the hope that I have is like, well, looking at this is that Kirby Smart's coming up on that too. We're sitting at like 8 or 9 years in there. And, with all the speeding stuff we've seen and the quarterback play not being as good this year, like, are they going to struggle as well and start to sort of come back to the pack? So the SEC has been pretty blessed. I think Alabama sort of took advantage of a time that folks weren't necessarily recruiting at that level. They had a major edge in recruiting, but now everyone is throwing resource after resource in that space. And you get good quarterback play, all of a sudden things flip.
Yeah, you say that, Will, but Alabama, they had their rise after the SEC was starting to win national title after national title. They were, it was, you had the LSU, you had Florida mixed in there, winning titles. Auburn won one in there too. Like it doesn't matter who's been, but the thing is, all these programs I'm naming, they kind of go up and down throughout the years. Bama just stays the same. That's been the outstanding part about Alabama.
I mean, so look, Ohio State's won a couple of titles in the last 15 years, right? You've got some other teams that have won titles in there. This may be one of those years where you just get a title from a conference that isn't the SEC, because the SEC has not matched its elite quarterbacks with the elite talent, right? So if you ask Nick Saban in a room right now, would he rather have Jackson Dart or Jalen Milroe, and neither one of those guys gets to hear about it? He's taking Dart. right? And so, and I think if you ask Kirby Smart, would you rather have Drake May or whoever he's going to have at quarterback? I think he's going to say Drake May. So there have been some
I think
misses in
that
terms
shows
of
your thoughts on Carson Beck at this point.
it. I have been less than impressed with Carson Beck so far. And again, I think if you ask Texas, would you give up on yours and bring somebody in from Alabama or Georgia? They go, absolutely not. Like, we have the guy we want right now. So quarterback play changes a lot of sins. You think about those Oklahoma teams with Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray. Those teams were really, really, really good. Not good enough to win national championship, but certainly made it into the playoff because the quarterbacks covered a lot of the sins on the defensive side of the ball. I think that's what we're seeing right now. So the question, there's still, the SEC has established itself as the place that you go if you want to make it to the NFL. You look at the NFL draft and it's always just SEC players taken all over the place. But the converse of that is that you're constantly having to turn over the players who come in. And look, I think what we might actually be seeing is a transition. I think Hugh Freeze is doing an unbelievable job at Auburn in terms of, you look at his recruiting class this year and his bump class year, he's doing everything that I wish Billy Napier had done 2 years ago in his recruiting class. I think you look at sort of the rise and fall of different programs, and it's fair to look at Georgia and specifically Alabama and go, okay, we know there's going to be a tail. When is that tail going to actually take hold? And then there's things like Brian Kelly out there calling his players out after the game and denying he said stuff that's on tape before the game against Florida State that sort of mimics his faking a Southern accent the year before. And those sorts of things are quirky and fun when you're winning and you're winning the SEC West. Those sorts of things are going to be held against him by all the faithful in Baton Rouge when things start to go south. And then, like you said, we're going to talk about Jimbo. A little bit different story there. But again, you think about quarterbacks, right? Like, Jimbo is a guy who supposedly has been an offensive wizard, a quarterback coach. He brings in Petrino to be his offensive coordinator and, still losing big time games. I think, the reality is that if I look at the SEC, I don't see a quarterback who's going to be in the running for the Heisman. I don't see a quarterback who's going to be in the running for the Maxwell. I don't see a quarterback who, quite honestly, is going to be in the running for AP All-American, right? Maybe KJ Jefferson gets like third team All-American, but I doubt it. I think those quarterbacks are all elsewhere, and that's what we're seeing right now, is we're just seeing quarterback play makes a big difference.
Well, one quarterback I was very high on in our preseason magazine, especially Connor Wegman coming into the season. I love the idea of bringing Bobby Petrino into Texas A&M. Petrino's offenses flourish wherever he goes. He has been hey, look, I'm not a Bobby Petrino fan, but the guy can coach. The guy can coach offense in particular. And I thought A&M, just the weapons they have on that team, I thought that offense was getting ready to explode. And, hey, they still put up 33 points, against the Miami Hurricanes. They come out of the game super hot. They block a punt. They punch it right in for an early score. They go right down, kick another field goal, and they're looking like they're about to steamroll Miami. Miami bounces back. Tyler Van Dyke has a day, just almost passes for 400 yards against a helpless Aggie defense. I thought that running game, I thought Miami had a shot. They were going to have to run the ball, and Van Dyke just went crazy. Big win for the Canes and Cristobal down in South Florida, Will. That's a huge difference from what I saw from Miami last year in terms of the ability to respond. But it's not like A&M just no-showed entirely. Evan Stewart was out there doing everything he can. I think he had 11 catches for over 100 yards. They got plenty of talent on the A&M roster, but what are you is this year 6 of Jimbo out in Aggieland? Gotta be asking yourself a lot of questions after this loss if you're Texas A&M.
Well, so if you look at Wegman's stats, and they had a cupcake against New Mexico to start with, where he went 18 of 23 with 5 touchdowns. His stats look identical to Graham Mertz after 2 games. Mm-hmm. Like, he's got more touchdowns. He's got more interceptions. His QB rating's 152.8. Mertz's, I think, is like 151. So those 2 players have been identical in terms of what they've done out on the field. Against Miami, had a QB rating of 116.6. He doesn't add a whole lot in the rushing game, 5 for 29. So a little bit, but not a whole lot. And so, look, A&M, I felt like in the first half was the better team, but the score was, I think, tied there at the half, or maybe
Miami took the lead right before the half. Yeah.
So Miami was ahead. So I'm looking at it going, geez, like they got outplayed and they're behind, or they
Yeah.
outplayed them and they're behind for A&M. And then things just fell apart there in the second half. So look, yeah, I mean, I think if Jimbo Fisher were our coach, we would be looking at it going, he had the 1 year of recruiting that bumped up, and then everything is sort of in the Dan Mullen range in terms of overall recruiting rankings. And honestly, that's what we're going to be asking about Billy Napier next year. That 2025 class is going to go a long way towards what the evaluation and the hype around Napier and the hope that Napier's bringing. He's going to have to start piecing that recruiting class together, because it's not just about one elite recruiting class. It's about stacking them one after another, after another, after another. And that's the thing about Freeze that makes me think he's about to build a monster there at Auburn is, one, we know he doesn't mind breaking some rules. And two, that, he's already recruiting at a level where Napier is right now in year 3 in his second season, in his second recruiting class. And so, look, Jimbo Fisher had a couple of years where they were recruiting okay, then had that one big leap when NIL came in, and then all of a sudden it went right back down. That's not going to be good enough if you're not able to out scheme teams. And right now, Wegman looks better than he did last year, but doesn't look like a star. And the fact that you struggled to find a star at the quarterback position means you can't get past the fact that your defense can't stop anybody. And look, I mean, A&M had played terribly on offense last year against Florida, but their defense couldn't stop Florida either. And that has been that was a consistent problem for Texas A&M last year, is not being able to stop anybody. So there was a lot of moaning in Aggie land about Jimbo calling plays and offensive coordinator and all that sort of stuff. And he brings in the offensive coordinator. Doesn't help, because they're giving up 38 points to people to the decent teams that they're playing. And so, I think.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, I thought you were done there. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like, quarterback play is a huge offset. It's why DJ Lagway is so important for Florida, because if Lagway comes in and is a star, the level of recruiting that Florida has they will be able to win big time with that level of recruiting. The problem is if you don't find that quarterback, it's almost impossible to win big time without that level of talent, and impossible to do it long term, because then what happens, right? 3 years from now, DJ Lagway's in the NFL, and you better hit again. And we're actually seeing this at Clemson right now, in terms of the national stage, is that they hit on Taj Boyd. They then had 1 year with somebody in between. I can't remember the guy's name. Then they have Deshaun Watson come in. Then they have Trevor Lawrence come in. So they've had NFL level quarterbacks for like a decade straight. And Uiagalelei, don't think he's going to play in the league, at least not as a starter. I think Klubnik doesn't look like he's going to play in the league, even though you picked him for Heisman this year. And I think that there's something to be said for, if you don't recruit at the Alabama and Georgia levels, that you're going to have to get elite quarterback play. And Texas A&M hasn't gotten that, and they've brought in offensive coordinators. They've got a bunch of offensive guys. They're not getting that, and the defense hasn't been successful. And you combine those things together, and all of a sudden the warts crop up.
Kelly Bryant sandwiched between Watson and Lawrence there. All right, I'm going to read you A&M schedule. Well, and I want to know, just stop me when Bobby Petrino is going to be on the sideline as the head coach. You ready? Louisiana Monroe this week. You got Auburn coming into Kyle Field next week.
I'm going to lose to Auburn.
Yeah. Oh, that's going to be trouble. Hugh Freeze there. Then you go to Dallas to play Arkansas. Alabama at home. Tennessee and Neyland on October the 14th. They have a bye week the 21st. South Carolina at Kyle Field. At Ole Miss. First Mississippi State. Abilene Christian at LSU. You didn't stop me. So you think Jimbo's making it to the end of the season?
Ole Miss. I think the Ole Miss game is the one, because that'll be
the one that breaks them.
Well, that'll be the one where, if A&M's defense can't stop anybody, you'll be able to make excuses for a loss against Alabama. I think you probably pull out the win against Arkansas. I think the game against Auburn is going to be close. That one's at home, right? That one's at Kyle Field.
Auburn is at Kyle Field.
All right, so they probably pull that one out.
Not this weekend, next weekend. Yeah.
So they probably pull that one out too. So what'll that be? Game 9 when they're against Ole Miss?
Ole Miss is, I didn't count the games here. So yeah, what is that about? Game 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, game 9.
Yeah. So they're probably either 6-2 or 5-3 going into that one.
Yeah.
And if they're 5-3 going into that one, and they lose to Ole Miss and they lose to Lane Kiffin, and Dart goes out and throws for 400 yards. The defense can't stop anybody, and Wegman is still sort of struggling. And now you're 5-4, like that. That I think is where you get some danger. You lose that game and go to 6-3. Like if they're 6-2 coming into it, I think maybe you get a little bit more rope. Yeah, I think. Look, we all know Bobby Petrino ain't going to hesitate to shiv his buddy in the to shiv Jimbo in the back if
Are
he
they
has an
buddies?
opportunity to. Well, I mean, if you're Petrino, that's why you take this job as an offensive coordinator, right?
Yeah,
You take this job. I mean, because two things. If all of a sudden A&M had a bunch of success, and look, they've only lost one game, just like Florida. So, but if A&M has a bunch of success this year and the offense looks fantastic and Wegman turns into a star, Petrino's got a head coaching job probably in the SEC next year. And if things go south and the offense still looks good, but A&M can't win, Petrino's probably the head coach of Texas A&M. So in terms of his calculation of what was going on, I think that was probably calculated there. But the interesting thing to me is going to be, good grief, the amount of money that Jimbo Fisher is owed. Like they're going to have to, like, there was something. What was it the other day? There was a hospital that was giving a gift to a football program.
Yeah.
Was it USF that was happening?
I think it was. That sounds right. Yeah. Tampa General, I think.
And somebody tweeted, "Is this the reverse LSU?" Because the LSU program was allegedly stealing from hospital funds. So something like that's going to have to go down in College Station to get rid of Jimbo. I mean, what's he owed? Like $55 million after this year?
Oh, I think it's more, man. I think we're 70s somewhere like that. I think we're in the Mel Tucker range.
Oh my goodness. Well, no comment.
Mel Tucker might be owed $0 after the investigations conclude. We'll see.
We'll see what ends up happening there, but it's a lot of money. And so, oh man. So in 2020, reworked his contract.
Is it 72?
10 years, $94.9 million. So, holy moly. All right. Hold on. I got to do the math.
I might have heard 72 with Jimbo, but while you're looking that up, the Petrino thing is just fascinating. And those are certainly that stretch of games there, that Auburn, Arkansas, Alabama, Tennessee, 2-2 in that stretch. Based on what I saw on the field at Miami, we might be looking at 1-3 or 0-4. But I do think A&M's got another gear where they were sloppy. They were sloppy at times against Miami, so I'll give them credit for that. But certainly didn't see an elite offense on the field against Miami. That I was really expecting them taking a step forward with that offense this year, but still plenty of time to develop.
So Fisher would be owed a $76.8 million buyout at the end of this year. Oh, that is a lot of recruits you could bring in from NIL. Like at that point, you just say, hey, like, can you just go sit in that office over there? We'll let Petrino run things and we'll divert some of the, can we buy you out for like 3/4 of it? You don't have to do anything.
I saw someone on Twitter joke about putting a Jimbo tax on the concession stand items. Like, guys, if we all just chip in an extra couple bucks on the concession stands, we got the buyout there. That's a rough situation. Hey, we're sitting here. I want to be clear too. I'm definitely preaching patience when it comes to Billy Napier. I think he's early on. There's a lot of circumstances that hey, year 6, I'm not going to be talking about patience. I'm not going to be talking about patience. We're not making it that far. But man, that's a tough situation out in A&M right now, and they definitely got to get it right if Jimbo's got any chance of sticking around.
Yeah. If nothing else, when you're on the outside looking in, like I was thinking about this the other day, when Florida State was having all their struggles with Taggart and then early on with Norvell, as an outsider, like it was just sort of, you're looking at it going, like that's kind of entertaining. And then after the Utah loss, like I had a section in my article called Billy Taggart, and Taggart was trending on Twitter and stuff like that. I'm like, it's not so much fun when it's your program that you're starting to doubt. And look, I'm not saying that Napier is that guy, but given what we saw against the Utah game, I couldn't say with positivity that he wasn't. And so that uncertainty is what I want to see get wrapped up this year. Like he has an ability to prove to us that the process, that the operational excellence, that his real value proposition is coming through. Has an opportunity to do that this week, at least to start doing that. So look, man, it's exciting. The cool part about the loss to Utah is that all your goals are still in front of you. You could still make the playoff. This team isn't going to make the playoff, but you could still make the playoff even with that loss. Now the question becomes, can you make some noise in the SEC? Can you reestablish dominance over Tennessee? Can you reestablish dominance over the SEC East, though the East is going away next year? Because next year's schedule ain't any easier. So, if we're going to sit here and go, well, we haven't beaten any top 15 teams because that's where our rivals are. It's like, well, that's pretty much the SEC, man. Your rivals are almost always top 15 teams. So, you got to win some of those games.
It's not like you're losing to total scrubs. That's all I'm making the point. I'm illustrating the point that's a little bit of a twisted stat right now. We're a little down.
Dude, they lost to Kentucky. They lost to Kentucky and Vanderbilt last year.
That's no excuse. You don't hear me talking about. You don't hear me making excuses about that, do you? You don't hear me making those excuses. Hey, Will, did you see? We're recording this Wednesday night. Did you see the Mexican government released bodies of aliens? Did you see that today?
I did see that.
Yeah, I think I saw Keon Coleman from Florida State jumping over a guy as one of the pictures they released there too. Did you see that play this weekend?
Coleman?
Did you see that play at Southern Miss against Southern Miss?
No, I didn't see that.
Oh, you got to check that out. That hurdle.
All right, I'll go check that out. Good. I'm glad that our rivals have are putting things on tape that make you compare them to aliens.
So it's not total scrubs over there, man.
It turns out our quarterback last year might have fit that bill. So but then again, he played pretty well his first start in the NFL. So maybe he made the right decision.
Yeah, there's another quarterback that was starting for us a couple of years ago too. That's playing okay over at Cincinnati right now too. So that's not a bad start for old Emory Jones up there.
Well, and a former recruit out of Arizona State who's putting up stats very similar to Florida's starting quarterback as well. So there's a lot of different things going on for comparison's sake, man. If we want to make them,
it's early.
I got to be honest. I beat Tennessee and everybody shuts up. It's an easy formula.
This will be a very, very pleasant show next week if we come in after beating Tennessee, and then Kentucky will completely ruin the mood on that the following week, right?
Nah, but see, you get 2 weeks of glory. That's the thing. So, the over/under episode of Gators Breakdown, Dave asked me who I thought the most important game was, and I said Tennessee was, and the reason is that if you had beaten Utah and you could beat Tennessee, Kentucky is a team that you can probably beat, and so you're looking at the opportunity to start 6-0, maybe even 7-0 heading into that Georgia game, and all of a sudden, like the narrative around the program completely changes. Conversely, losing the first game to Utah, now you lose this one, and you got to stew on it for 2 weeks because Charlotte is an expectation of winning, and you're 2-2 heading into that game against Kentucky. It's a must-win game against Kentucky,
right?
If you end up in that situation, so I mean. In many ways, the players should be about as motivated as anybody can be because they had to deal with all the crap that was hurled their way after the Utah loss for 2 weeks. Because people like me are sitting there going, I don't believe what you just put on tape against McNeese State. And I think that's a fair assessment. But if I'm a player, I can't change people's minds with my play against McNeese State. And if they go out and they lose this game against Tennessee, they aren't going to be able to change anyone's minds going out and playing against Charlotte. They're going to have to start winning the SEC games to do that. So this is an opportunity. If you win this one, you get to basically live like a king on campus for a couple of weeks. Obviously, you still need to pay a little bit of attention to Charlotte, but that should be a win. And now you're 3-1 coming into that Kentucky game, not a must win, but certainly a revenge game. And one of the games that Billy Napier is going to have to start winning if he's going to reestablish the program. Again, you still have an opportunity to be heading into those games against Georgia with a 6-2 record, or even a 5-2 record, or a 6-1 record, going into that gauntlet at the end, because that is a gauntlet, but you build up that confidence. You have a couple of those games at home. Is there the capacity to then to then turn in a season that beats everyone's expectations, even with the Utah game? It all starts with this one. This has always been, because it's almost always the third game of the season. Tennessee game is almost always the bellwether for the season. When the rivalry started to fall apart, where it became essentially a guaranteed win for Florida, that sort of shifted to LSU, where that was where you knew what you had. But given what we see in the schedule this year, this is where we're going to know what we have. If Florida comes out and wins against Tennessee, it really establishes the Gators not in the Georgia realm or the Alabama realm, but certainly above A&M, above South Carolina, above Kentucky, above Vanderbilt, like where those would start to be games where you'd look at it and go, I think Florida's going to be favored in this one. And, if Florida loses this one, I don't think they're favored against Kentucky in a couple of weeks, and things could get ugly real quick. So this is one I think, if Napier has things to pull out of the offensive magician's hat, it's time to do it right now. And if he's got to pull out Mertz is going to throw the ball 6 times, and we're just going to run it down your throat, and we're gonna win this, given who we are, and establish our identity. Also, something he's going to have to do, because this team, to put in a successful season, I think is going to have to look a lot like the 2012 team, where Driscoll wasn't winning the game. Driscoll wasn't the solution, but he wasn't the problem, right? And that's what we've got at quarterback right now. So Mike Gillisley was the solution that year, and Etienne and Johnson are going to have to be the solution this year.
Let's see it. Big week, big game week here, Will. Let's do it. Gators.
Let's go, man. Hope I'm wrong.
On Saturday. Yeah, I hope you're wrong too. All right. Have a great weekend, everybody, and go Gators.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to Stand Up and Holler. If you're interested in more information from me and Nick, you can go over to readandreaction.com. You can like and subscribe our YouTube channel here at Read and Reaction. Or you can go to patreon.com/readandreaction to support us, get extra information, and we do Ask Anythings over there every once in a while as well. So check us out. Thanks for listening.